Okay, let's collab.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Leah. Hi, Sing. Hi. Hi,
Hi.
Dr. How are you?
I'm good. How are
There's so many people
you?
here.
Yay. It's good. It's a good topic to talk about. I really I want to really kind of later on go into the whole failure part of like the importance of failure for
Yes.
children.
Okay. Yes, for sure. So, thank you everybody for joining us today. We're going to get started. First, I'm going to go through basically like the topic or why we're here today, which is the 10 days of connection, and then we're going to go through the actual information for each topic that we're going over. So if you guys can go to the website, if you're following along with us, there is a packet that you'll see right on the homepage. You'll also see it on our link tree. There'll be a direct link there as well, and on the top menu bar. So you want to get this packet because it has all of the information we're going through. It's so much info per subject, but also we have a lot of worksheets, one of which a lot of people are excited about, which is our creating healthy attachments, which helps you go through the actual signs of an attachment disorder and the steps for trying to correct it. Okay, so we're so excited to have Dr. Yates here today. I'm so happy. Thank you so much for your time. I'm
Absolutely.
going to give it to you so that you can introduce yourself, and then we're going to get started with the program.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Irene. Nice to meet you guys. Nice to have everybody on our live. This is a really important topic to talk about, especially when we're talking about failure and success and love languages and attachment style. These are really important topics that parents all want to kind of know about. And yeah, I mean, let's get started. It's something that I think they're all looking forward to kind of getting more information on.
Yeah. Awesome. So today we're here because of a very special event in Miami, Florida called 10 Days of Connection. It's actually an annual event where all over the city there's different experiences that are being put together to bring people together. So essentially, Radical Partners and Luisa Zambrano and her team, we're so thankful for you and the idea behind the 10 Days of Connection. But essentially what it is trying to bring people back together because there's a lot of it's extremely divided in communities these days based on our differences. But if you look at differences as what you contribute, then really we can use that to create greater connection both in our communities but also in our families. So we're very excited to be a part of 10 Days of Connection this year. It's our very first year, and we would love for you guys to go on their website. There's links on our site, and there's still 6 more days. There's a lot of activities and events and experiences that help bring so many differences of that people have together. So we're very excited to be learning today about a child's learning style, their love language, and their attachment style. And basically, these three are the top three soft skills that contribute to our success in the world. So our ability to navigate the world, our ability to have strong connections with other people, and also our ability to problem solve and understand what we are feeling and want inside and how to make it real outside. And so when we grow these connections for children early on, essentially what we're doing is letting them become more successful in who they're trying to be authentically, but earlier on. So really what we're trying to do is avoid a lot of the problems and avoid a lot of the frustration that happens between parents and children when they're trying to kind of go through, the experiences of life. Right.
Yeah.
The first thing that you're going to see is a quick explanation for why these things matter. And so essentially, the first we're going to go through is learning styles. I would love to first open up the floor for for Dr. Irene to speak about what she thinks about the importance of learning styles, and then if there's any way that you kind of seen learning styles be an issue that families come to you about.
Absolutely. So, I mean, learning styles are, I think it's a new concept that's coming up more so in the modern world that we live in, especially with our millennial parents. I think back in the days, they didn't really care about our learning styles when I was a child, at least. But it's very important to understand that each human has a different way of absorbing information into their mind and also, retaining it. And so if we could actually learn how each child learns and retains information, that's going to be a plus for us. So some children learn through watching videos, some children learn through listening to things, some children learn through lectures and all these, or drawings, or art, whatever it is. So the two main ways would be either visual or auditory, and it's truly a magical thing once you learn how a child is able to comprehend the information you're giving them, because once you're able to pinpoint that, then you're able to cater whatever you're teaching to that specific child. Or at the same time, if you're a teacher, let's say in class, the importance of incorporating both ways of teaching, using visual aids, using readings, or audiobooks or whatever it is, and incorporating that so that children are actually retaining the information rather than sitting there watching and hoping for them to understand what on earth you're talking about. So there are a couple of assessments that you can actually do, which I can share later on. You can share it with your audience, where it's a very short assessment and it teaches you about each child's learning style. And that way you could really just put together, your curriculum and cater it to them, and really allow them to learn what you're trying to teach them, rather than them just sitting there and listening to you and then failing their tests, or not doing well, or not being able to, repeat whatever, or retain the information and repeat back to you what you've said. I think it's an important thing for us to all kind of do, especially in the classroom. So learning the learning styles of each child and then catering your teaching style to that child is going to be such an essential component in education right now, especially.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much for that. So yeah, and you touched on so many important topics. So I'm going to kind of interpret or expand on some of the things you mentioned. Particularly, there are about 4 learning styles, and you mentioned 2 of the main ones. It is auditory and visual. But there's also reading and writing, and people who learn through actually working with
Mm-hmm.
the concept themselves, so through hands.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, they benefit. So, for example, visual learners obviously are going to benefit most through sight, and auditory through hearing. But reading and writing, they'll benefit most through taking notes, and kinesthetic would benefit most through actually working with the stuff and movements itself. What you basically spoke about, which was the most important part, is we've learned more recently that your brain lights up in different parts based on your learning style. And so when a child doesn't learn as well through just visual or listening, they're not trying to give you a hard time. They're actually, parts of their brain are lighting up more when trying to learn. And those are the actual parts that if you engage with and give them more resources in that way, they'll learn faster and they'll understand the material in a deeper way. And what's really interesting, and just expanding on what you mentioned, in classrooms, educators and parents get so frustrated because kids aren't learning the material, or they're not learning as fast. And it really is an important problem to solve, because depending on the topic, for example, with reading, by 3rd grade, if they're falling behind, they'll fall behind much stronger for the rest of their education if they don't solve those problems in the way that best fits them at that point. And so a parent really is, they're helping their child understand and learn throughout their whole life by showing them that their own brain lights up in their own particular style, and trying to work with that better. Now, these days,
Yeah.
educators do try to incorporate different styles because they're learning this as well. But what is really interesting, and I wanted to point out, on the bottom of the packet, right down here, you're going to see an image, and it shows you what actual problems or things you would need to try to enhance per learning style. So I'll give you an example. So a child that learns through auditory or listening, where they're seated in the room will matter to them. The atmospheric conditions, so the air conditioning and how hard it is to kind of hear from that from that area will matter to them. When it comes to verbal, okay, the time of the day that you're teaching them will matter to them because their brain is tired. Movement and actually trying to get kids to basically keep the novelty in learning is going to affect a child that learns through movement more than a child that learns visually.
Absolutely.
And so these are particular details that you can keep down here and match to your child, but that are very important, and you wouldn't really notice why a child's having issues learning unless you understood their learning style, okay? And so there is some follow-up resources you did mention. On the bottom, you will see a link, and you can basically answer a lot of questions that will help you learn your own learning style and your child's learning style. And we'd really welcome you to go ahead and do those quizzes on that link. So next, thank you so much for that topic. That was a really great topic. Love language. And this one is actually, it's so important for how we relate to others, and how we solve problems, and how we actually make problems larger. So again, I would love to open this up to you, Dr. Irene. So have you had any experiences with families coming in where they're just speaking the wrong love language, and if they just spoke to each other in the way that best fits their a way of understanding care, that their problems would be solved?
Yeah, I don't know about their problems being solved,
Oh,
but
well,
yeah,
no,
most of their
but you
problems.
know, they would help
Yeah,
them
you're
towards their
right.
solution.
They would solve their problems much easier and faster, absolutely. So there is the book, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard of it. It is The Five Love Languages. It's probably one of my favorite books, very easy to read. All the way in the back, there is an assessment that you can take, which actually teaches you about your love language, and you might have more than one. So that's an important thing to take into consideration. We actually never applied this to children. And why I feel like we don't tend to do that, because when we look at love, we're looking at couples and relationships, but we don't realize that we also have a relationship with the children in our family. So it's an important thing. There's many things to consider. So first and foremost, a child's love language will start to develop based off of what they're modeled in home. So for instance, and it's also, there's a difference in cultural stuff too. So we have to take into consideration the cultural background of the child and the family. So when a child is growing up, they're watching their parents and they're seeing how they show each other love or caring, or how one feels loved or heard or cared for or seen. And they observe, and then they learn, oh, when dad brings mom flowers, mom is happy, she feels loved, right? Because mom says, oh, you love me, you brought me flowers, or whatever it is. But we never really ask ourselves, okay, what is my child's love language? And it doesn't have anything to do with intimate love. It has everything to do with how do they feel loved? How does my child feel loved? How does my child feel cared for? And how does my child feel heard? And when we look at, children, we can simply just ask them, what makes you happy? What makes you, and they'll ask for it. Children are very expressive. They're very open, and they'll tell you, I want ice cream, or I want that toy, or sit with me, read to me. So I want ice cream, I want that toy is what? Gift giving, things that you can gift someone that they feel good and loved. Okay, well, I want you to spend time with me. That's, spending time with one another. That's another love language. Talking to words of affirmation, when you're telling your child, which one of the things that's coming up right now is a lot of parents are holding back from telling their children that their little girl is beautiful or their son is strong. These are actually really important things that we still need to consider, and we still need to tell our children or the children in our life, is that you are beautiful, you are smart, you're doing amazing, or you need to do better, whatever it is, when we move into the whole failure talk. And for boys, you're strong, you can do it, motivating them and feeding their ego a little bit. That's totally fine. I think a lot of parents shy away from it because of other things that are kind of going on social media and stuff like that, which we can talk about later on. But learning your child's love language is one of the most important things you can do. And the way you can do that is simply, number one, observing. Number one, you can read the book so you can learn the 5 love languages. Number 2 is observing your child and what makes them happy and seen and heard. And number 3, you can ask them, what does mommy do that allows you to feel heard? Or what does daddy do that allows you to feel seen? Or what are some things that make you feel loved? And so once you can do that, you can learn, because they're humans, they're little humans, but they're very smart and they can tell you. And even sharing the book with them, honestly, even like going through the book elementary style, depending on how old your child is, and kind of like putting it together where they understand that there's different ways that we feel loved, heard, and seen, and modeling that in your family, in conflict, when you have conflicts, modeling that, communication. So one of the things that children actually do not see, which is very important at home, is how parents resolve conflict.
Yep.
Right? So they see their parents fight, but then how do parents go from, I hate you, whatever, let's go really extreme, to we love each other and we're having breakfast in the morning? Children miss that communication that happens between mom and dad of, I forgive you, I'm sorry, I was wrong, or you did this and it hurt my feelings, and so forth. So modeling how to forgive, modeling how to love, modeling how to be heard and seen is essential. And then your child learns that, and then they learn, oh, this is how I feel loved, or this is how I feel heard, and this is how I feel seen. And so that's kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, for
it's important.
sure. I think you did like basically my job.
Oh.
So yes, essentially, especially when you're developing a person's sense of self and developing how they repair and relate to other people, attachment style, love language, I'm sorry, a love language is essentially what lets a person feel stronger in their own sense of self. Yes. Because they accept, this is what I like and this is what you like. Mm-hmm. And understanding that difference and standing in that difference. So saying that it's okay that I like this, and it's okay that you like that, and I still want you to respond to me in that way, is really what gives a person strength, or one of the things that gives a person strength, especially when it comes to relating to other people. And it's so difficult because everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants connection, and so the pressures that come with that and and that stress, is what makes being authentic difficult. And especially if having love languages is a strong concept in your family, then basically it becomes something that's natural to them, something that's a non-negotiable. It's just a natural thing that they do, just like you mentioned, Dr. Irene. So, and what was so important, and why I think love languages is so important to learn, is for repair. And I think repair, just like you mentioned, kids always see the bad and they don't see the good. And essentially, and the reason why that is because those conversations end up being done in private. But when you do see your dad come in with flowers, or you have the talk, the I'm sorry, or whatever little overtures that people do that match them. So it's essentially all the things that we listed in today's post are examples of that. The child knows that that's a part of what you do to make it up to a person after you've hurt them in either, you know, physically, emotionally, not physically, but emotionally, right, or mentally. So essentially, it's so important to do and to understand the effects of it, because long term, and I do want you to speak on this next, but long term, you'll see people acting out their needs for love, for connection, and they'll act them out, unfortunately, in unhelpful ways until they get that. And so it is helpful to do this in the family, to learn this early, and to introduce that to kids early. And it is hard because it's something that's being done towards kids for the first time. So a part of this packet, we included a resource for you, which is essentially Mom's Guide to Love Languages. It gives you
so nice.
each style hints, so basically you can match it to your child. Like, this is what my child shows off, and so he probably is quality time or gifts, and examples, so examples for you to do, little tips, and then also the bottom line for each style. So for example, for quality time, the bottom line is to give your child focused attention throughout the week or on a regular basis. And so for encouraging words, it's to be genuine and specific in your praise. And so just, you know, good job or I love you is not going to matter as much as really seeing a detail of something that they put effort into, for example. Okay, yeah. So we hope you go and use the love languages and our post today for examples to apply that in the home.
There's a question actually that's really important. Somebody's asking about how when they're co-parenting, if one of them is doing, you know, is trying at least to incorporate love languages or be mindful and the other one is not. So I'm trying to, so one of the most important things that we can consider is, as long as we have one good parent, we're good. One good parent is enough. It's good enough. Both parents don't need to be perfect. You know, parents are different. They parent different. If you're going through a divorce, sometimes people like to do things on purpose, not to listen and not to do things and that's fine. You continue to do what you know is right in raising your child the way you want them to be raised and teaching them. And if your partner is not wanting to follow through, try to have a conversation with them and kind of let them know if there's some sort of like any kind of relationship you might have with them. Try to talk to them and let them know what you're trying to do and what you're trying to implement, and if they can keep it out of the relationship and actually be on board. And if they're not, that's fine. As long as you have one good parent that's following through, you're good. You're fine. I just want to let them know, because that's something
that is so
comes up
important.
quite often.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually some topics that we've had come up before and is very important. Mm-hmm. And really what you want, the type of support that these parents need to know is eventually your child will notice. They'll notice the treatment, and they'll notice the difference, and they'll notice the effort. And so you don't have to worry in that way. The best thing to do is obviously, what Dr. Ye said, is try to get both parents on board. But you don't have to worry in that way. Your child's not going to be harmed or ruined because you're not getting everybody on the same page. They're going to notice the difference, and they're going to notice how good they feel when they're being treated the right way.
Yeah, even with we don't even have to go to divorced parents. We could even go with grandparents. Sometimes we raise our children a specific way. Oh, dear God, we send them to their grandparents' house and they just undo everything we've done. So we're going to go into attachment style, which is amazing that we're transitioning now, because that's something I want to bring up. And it's so important for children to have different caregivers, for them to be exposed to different caregivers, because that's how they're going to learn different attachment styles. So I'll kind of let you go from there. But yeah, this isn't only for divorced parents to be on the same page, but it's also for grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters who might be, and babysitters who are taking care of your kids.
Yeah, so there is absolutely zero way to shelter your child. There's, you know, they're going to be exposed to educators and people in school and friends and etc. Really, in our video yesterday touches on this. Your work in developing a strong self-esteem is all you need to worry about. Eventually, they navigate the world through the understanding that you've created in them. And so you don't really have to worry about having everybody be on the same page and not letting them be exposed. It's actually a bad thing to not let them be exposed to the different attachment styles, just like you mentioned.
Yep.
So that's actually a great segue to ask you, what is essentially, how do attachment styles show up in negative traits, toxic traits, misbehavior, and if you can speak a little bit more about what you think is the importance of attachment styles in kind of problems in the home. So
Yeah, I work with a lot of moms, new moms especially, and one of the most common attachment style that shows up is the anxious attachment style. And it's not only with the child having anxiety, but also the mom, dropping them off at daycare, dropping them off at school, dropping them off with your in-laws, whatever it is. Attachment styles are very, very important to understand, but you also have to know that it changes over time. It's on a continuum. You can definitely change your attachment style. So as a child, when babies are born, they're born with their own temperament. They don't have a personality yet. So they are born with a temperament that they have. You'll get to learn when you see your baby if they're crying too much, or if they're quiet, or if they're able to, self-soothe and all these different things. When we look at object relations theory, we kind of observe children and we learn. So they're born with their temperament and they start to develop their personality. Now, their personality, they kind of develop through the perception of their parents and how their mom, if there's any kind of neglect, abuse, or healthy attachment. And I like to put it in quotes because I don't want to overgeneralize what's healthy to me might not be healthy to you, might not be healthy to somebody else. So again, cultural backgrounds have a big impact of what healthy attachment looks like. Your religion has a lot of impact on what it looks like. But when we look at it from a psychological point of view, so there's that anxious attachment where it's like you have this severe anxiety when you're away from your parent. This is the common one that I see, especially when I do observations at school. And we teach the children. So they'll come to school, mom leaves, and they're just screaming at the top of their lungs because they know if they do this, mom will come back, right?
yeah,
Because after a while, mom goes, oh my God, my child's in danger. So like that's being triggered into the mom's mind where it's like, okay, I left them at school. They're crying. It's okay. They'll be fine. And after a certain amount of crying, they go, oh my God, baby's in danger. I got to go back. So children learn how to manipulate their parents through their unhealthy attachment style that they might have, which then can actually, if you don't work on it, it can actually come up in their relationships, and their love relationships, and their relationships with their future partners, their friends, and so forth. So that's one of the most unhealthy ones I've seen, is the anxious attachment, and they learn how to manipulate, and it comes up in school. They go to school, they also present it with their teachers and their friends, and they learn how to manipulate the situation to get their anxiety soothed. That's all they want. They just want to soothe their anxiety. So when we look at that, one of the things we kind of want to do is teach them that when somebody leaves, they're going to come back. They're not being abandoned, you know. And when we look at, I'm not going to go too much into it, but when we look at, let's say, borderline personality disorder, when we look at children who we see kind of traits where they're building up, the anxious attachment and the avoidant attachment are the two attachment styles that we look at, that we try to kind of reshape, so that they don't think that the world is an unsafe place and they're going to get abandoned and they don't have abandonment issues. Right. So that's one of the main ways. And I think the biggest thing you could possibly do is teach your child that when I leave, I come back. But if it doesn't mean that I'm going to come back because you are screaming and crying, negative attention is better than no attention at all, kind of that situation going on right there. But teaching them, when I leave, I'll come back. Mom is going to leave, but I'm going to come back. Dad's going to leave, but I'm going to be back. I'm not abandoning you. I'm not neglecting you. After a while, they kind of get the point.
Yeah, that's actually an amazing point, and I think that it is a great cause for why anxious attachments happen. We've done a bridging strategy for anxiety, and that's essentially where you
Mm-hmm.
prep the child beforehand with a method called bridging, and you basically let them know that when you are going to be happy to see them next. And so
Yeah.
when you're dropping them off at school, you would say, I'm so excited to see you after school, and to pick you up for ice cream after school, or
Yeah.
to go to the park with you after school. Those little words of confirmation of the return, which is exactly what you're speaking to, does wonders for a child. And this will even work with sleep anxiety. So when a child is leaving to go to bed, you can prep them by saying, I'm so excited to make you pancakes tomorrow morning, or to give you a hug tomorrow morning. And those little words of confirmation end up doing so much. That's a strategy by Dr. Kennedy, and we've done posts like that before. So you can see that on our page. And that's an amazing point, because you're absolutely right that anxious and avoidant attachment styles are the ones that really create problems long term.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go very quickly to the packet, you'll see a page on attachment styles, and you'll see that the 5 main things that lead to a child having a secure attachment style. So if you're wondering, I don't know if I'm creating a secure attachment with my child, am I checking the marks? Am I doing the right behaviors? You'll actually see the 5 main things that lead to a child feeling secure in their attachment here. And you'll see a great follow-up resource, which is the attachment project, where you can take a free quiz and see essentially what attachment style you're currently seeing in yourself and your child. But essentially, it's the idea of trust, like you mentioned, and keeping that trust with the child early on, because these styles end up being the silent programming that a person has when they're creating relationships with other people. And so it's very unconscious, and they don't understand on a very overt level that they're doing these things. It's just the way that they've related since a child. And so when you're helping a child correct that, you're actually solving so many problems down the road. It's ridiculous, and it becomes so important for them to correct these as early on as possible, especially when it comes to like negative behaviors and how some of those might show up, right? So the worksheet that we're so excited about is creating healthy attachments, and you will find this in the packet. And essentially, it gives you the examples of what a disordered attachment is. So what a child shows up as when they have an attachment issue, or how they're going to behave, not only in their physical reaction, so a lack of eye contact, so being very manipulative, or having a lack of remorse, or some of the examples, but also some examples that have to do with behavior and learning difficulties will also be listed here. On the bottom, you're going to see the actual steps to correcting an attachment disorder. And what's really interesting here is how you start is by finding out your own attachment style as a parent, okay? And so really the way that you create a healthy attachment when it's already negative is to understand how you are contributing to the negative attachment, because you are the biggest influence and the biggest motivator for change. And so essentially, once you understand your attachment style, you go through understanding the beliefs and the experiences in your own life that led to you giving off that attachment style to your child. Once you basically go through this process of thinking through it, you can see very easily how you can change that. So how you can apply the solutions that are the exact opposite, which would then create a secure attachment. So we walk you through it. And what's amazing is this worksheet is so important for taking it to a therapist, sitting down with your child, sitting down and just thinking about it yourself. So it doesn't matter if you know, you can solve the problem with one worksheet, or if this worksheet ends up being the plan of action for you and a professional that understands how to find solutions specific to your problem. It's an amazing worksheet for you to get started on fixing any issues that you have with the attachment of your child.
I like how you brought in therapy because that's so important. And that's one of the things that's going to allow even adults to shift their attachment style and work on their abandonment issues or whatever it is. So, taking kids to therapy is one of the most important things you can do when you start to see things that are a little unhealthy. Because if we do catch it earlier, then we're able to help them and reshape it much faster. Adults are more set in their ways, children aren't. So, but then again, even as an adult, if you do have attachment issues, you can absolutely work on them. As I said, it's constantly changing through your life experiences. So I like how you mentioned about looking at your own attachment style.
Yeah,
That's so
for
important.
sure.
Most parents don't look at themselves. They just look at their child and what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Hmm.
First of all, that's everybody in all ages. The first thing is like, what are you doing wrong?
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
yeah. So essentially, when it comes to attachment style, a parent is the most powerful source of influence. And just to speak to therapists are who are the experience and the tools and solutions. That's what they're going to bring they're going to bring to the table. So you're going to bring in all of your problems. And they're going to bring in the experience that they have dealing with kids just like yours and issues just like you have in your attachment, and then what has worked for other people. And so that's why we really recommend that. But we want you to have the tools to get started. We want you to have the tools to really understand what's happening. And often, you can find the right therapist when you know what the real problem is. And so that's what contribution we can make. But really, after that, it's up to you to create the change and to find the right supporters for you to create that change, right? So to kind of wrap this up, I wanted to segue to why it's important to let your children fail early on. And I think that's so important these days because of how fast the world moves, how quickly people are expected to fail and get back on it, and how important it is to get back on it, because if you don't, life just keeps moving. So I would love for you to speak on some of the things that you think are important in terms of letting kids fail.
Absolutely. One of the most important things you could possibly do is let your child fail, whether that's in sports or that's taking a test. Failure can show up in many different ways throughout our life. It could be in school, it could be in a sport, it could be within a relationship, it could be however you want to kind of look at what failure is. In order for someone to succeed, you need to allow them to fail. And children learn through failure. Humans learn through failure. You can't constantly be winning in your life. That's impossible. And if you are, we got to look at the narcissistic ego, the bruised ego there, okay? Because that's impossible. Nothing is perfect. So whenever we look at sports, for instance, oftentimes the parents are the ones that can't deal with the failure or the child's team losing, because they look at it as a reflection of themselves, that their child failed and that they're a failure. That has nothing to do with you. You got to separate yourself from your child and allow them to have their experience of not feeling good. And it's okay, because when they don't feel good, then they learn, okay, well, what happened? I didn't do a good job. What do I need to work on? So our failures actually present growth areas which allow us to look forward to things, to work on things, to better ourselves, to become stronger, better, whatever it is, and then to eventually win, right? Now, I think I was reading this thing where it's every single, like the most successful people in the world have failed more than about 100 times in their life. And if they didn't fail, they wouldn't learn how to better themselves. So actually, every single failure is a stepping stone towards your success. So parents, just because your child fails in class or fails a test or fails a sport, that's not a reflection of you. Allow yourself to step back and look at them and say, okay, what can we learn from this? What do you feel like you need to do better? What do you think you need to, study? Where do you need to study more? What do you need to do more? What do you need to become stronger at? Whatever it is. So allowing your child to fail is actually going to help them succeed. And then they're going to be able to look at all their other failures in life, like when we have a breakup, for instance, or a failed marriage is what we like to call it. I don't like that term, but in the future, if they do have a relationship and it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean you failed. You could look at it that way. The same feelings might come up. Okay, fine, we failed that relationship, but what did we learn from it? We become different people through every single relationship. We become every single failed relationship. We become, better people through every single failed test or failed, work experience, interview that we've done, and so forth. So failure leads to success if you allow the person to grow and learn from what they failed in, is the biggest thing that we can learn these days. Not everyone's a winner, guys. Not everyone's a winner, and that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think actually I'm going to touch on that because that's really important. When a child understands that failure is a part of life, it doesn't become a part of them, which is when you don't allow a child to fail, you're not allowing them to finish that loop of learning where they get the positive portion, not just the negative. And if a child continuously does not finish that loop, where they get the positive portion. Like, for example, if a parent comes in, steps in and finishes it or fixes the problem so that they are no longer failing. Or they do the project for them or whatever. Essentially what happens is the child never feels that positive portion of finding the solution and then trying again and doing it successfully. And so they never do that. As an adult, they still fear what they do not know. They fear a lack of capability. They don't know how to gain that capability because they never practiced improving on their problem. And so it becomes an issue that piles up. It hurts self-esteem more than so many other aspects of life because it makes you feel small while everybody else is growing or feeling bigger or larger through the things that they don't know. And when you think about what failure is, it's essentially the things that you didn't know that lead to success. And so to punish a child for that or to never allow them to grow past that step keeps them very small. It leads to less achievement. It leads to issues relating to other people. It could lead to jealousy, jealousy that stems from feeling like it's not fair that you don't feel capable of doing something where other people can. And so you're really hurting a child long term and maybe even creating some toxic behaviors when you're not letting them help, when you're not letting them learn. But actually, that slip is an important point that I wanted to bring up. Parents think that when a child is failing, they should just let them fail and not do anything. And I think that's actually a very big problem because that child feels unsupported, and that also leads to when a person's an adult, they don't feel like they have any support system and they just suffer through problems because they never got that support. And so what does meaningful support mean when a child is failing? Essentially, that can mean hand-over-hand learning. That can mean meaningful support through finding a solution. And so you're not giving them the solution, but you're maybe mentioning, did you think about this? That would lead them to then find the solution on their own. But just allowing a kid to fail and giving them no support doesn't help. It doesn't help a person that's alone in a problem remains alone in a problem, you know. And so the answer or the message is definitely not to leave a child alone through a failure, but to understand what it is to provide meaningful support. It's so important, and really modeling what it is to solve a problem after it's failed is one of the biggest contributions that you can make to a child's career or to their life, especially early on.
And also, one of the things to take into consideration is, you know, if your child is always winning, you're just feeding that narcissistic ego and they just think that's how life is. That's not realistic. Life is not
Yeah.
always winning. Life is not always butterflies and rainbows. So in order to give your child a reality check of how the world is, they're going to have to experience the failing and winning, failing and learning how to win, or failing and sometimes not succeeding in the things that they hoped that they would succeed in, and knowing still how to move forward and move past that. So we have to really understand, especially in the culture we're in right now, where our egos are a little too fed with how easily things are obtained and received, that it's important to talk to your child about, well, you might not succeed in everything and that's okay, but you know, the things that you really want to succeed in, you're going to fail at a few times
Yeah.
before you actually start to get closer to success. So there's so many different components when it comes to the specific topic of failure that touch up on the child's personality, the development of their ego, and also the success that they might face in the future and their relationships. You know, so it's such a huge thing that we don't really look at. We just say, oh well, you know, they failed, or no, you're not supposed to fail, or you could fail and not do anything about it. So parents removing themselves, teaching, talking about it, learning from it, and giving your child kind of a reality check is important. But of course, it has to be done at appropriate, with an appropriate communication style. You know, you can't tell a 5-year-old the same way you talk to a
Yeah.
15-year-old. So learning how to speak to your child and making it very elementary for them to understand is important. But yes, good
Yeah, for
God,
sure.
we can go on forever with failure.
Yeah, at earlier ages, hand over hand learning will be more important, and
Yes.
obviously as they get older, the communication is going to be where you lean on. But I really loved the point where, you know, a lot of toxic behaviors stem from a lack of feeling capable to learn or solve problems on your own,
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy competition between people, especially at work, or even in relationships, where, you know, even people between a loving relationship are competitive
Mm-hmm.
in unhealthy ways against each other. Sometimes are because they don't feel like they're capable of achieving the same thing, or they're trying to control their perception in front of other people, talking about that ego when it comes to what they know, don't know, and what they can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so just teaching the kids the tools, or what the process is for going from a failure to a success, and just understanding that it takes work and that you're going to fail. It becomes so important for how well a child develops long term. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so to start wrapping it up, I just quickly wanted to go over the end of the packet and the resources that we put together, the extras. So one of the main things that we really enjoyed, besides the mom's guide to love languages, and our how to create healthy attachments, we also have getting to know your family. And it's essentially a Venn diagram that lets you compare your love language and your child's, your attachment style and your child's, and how it shows up. And so you'll find a lot of similarities between the two, obviously, because it's your child. And that's a way that you guys can bond easily. You can do more of those things to make sure each person feels cared for. And then you can also see through your differences what things are going to lead to issues, and you can start maybe thinking of solutions, or, you know, ways that you can practically deal with that. So we really love this one, getting to know your family. And we have a couple of posters. First is questions to ask your child. And it was essentially exactly what you were mentioning earlier, Dr. Irene, where you want to ask your child, how do you feel best listened to? How would you feel best reacted to when you're frustrated? And how important it is to be to overt in all of your relationships with your child, with your spouse, or whatever, in trying to speak directly to how they receive love and how important that is. So these are questions to get you started. And then the very last one, and this one is for our 10 Days of Connections celebration. We have 10 days to build connection with your child. And this isn't have a camp out example or, go to a park. These are very detailed, really interesting, fun things to do with your child. Most of them are kind of next level. So we hope that you look for the packet and take advantage of some of these examples of really fun things you can do with your kids. These are memories that they're going to have for a lifetime.
We will
So
also go ahead and we'll go ahead and share that packet on our website at hillsidewellnesscenter.org. I'm going to go ahead and share that with everyone. And we'll share it with everybody, so you can just click on it. You can share the link with me, they can click on it, and they can download the packet. It's such an amazing packet, a lot of things that actually parents can do with children. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And so we are so happy for you guys to be here with us today for our 10 Days of Connection event. There is a link in our bio, again, for this packet. There's also a link for a quick survey directly from the 10 Days of Connection event. But we really hope that from our talk today, you understand how differences can be what brings people together, not what separates them, and how important that is to establish in the home. Essentially, it's the most thoughtful and impactful gift that you can give a child and your own family right now and for the future. And so we're so excited for you guys to be here. We're so happy to be a part of 10 Days of Connection. Thank you so much for the team behind 10 Days of Connection, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was awesome. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye, everybody.